It was a quiet Sunday morning in the rolling hills outside Austin, Texas. The Musk estate lay bathed in a soft golden light, the kind of light that doesn't rush you. It just gently wakes the world up. Birds chirped in the oak trees. Somewhere, in the distance, sprinklers ticked rhythmically, watering the already perfect lawn. The world for once seemed still. Inside the sprawling mansion, everything was in order. The marble floors reflected the sun's rays like polished mirrors. The smell of freshly brewed Ethiopian coffee wafted through the kitchen, mingling with the scent of cedarwood that lingered in the furniture. Elon Musk, dressed in his usual black tee and worn-in jeans, sat at the breakfast nook, gazing absently at a thick binder full of engineering schematics. Today was supposed to be productive. He had planned to visit the Tesla Design Center in Austin, tweak the newest revisions of the Cybertruck's final production model, and maybe, just maybe, review preliminary AI interface blueprints from Neuralink. For a man like Elon, Sundays weren't for slowing down. They were for catching up with a mind that never quite slept. But today the universe had other plans. "Dad?" a soft voice called out from the hallway. Elon looked up. There he was, XAA-12, or as everyone lovingly called him, X. The boy had just turned 5, but spoke with a mixture of shyness and depth that often caught adults off guard. He stood barefoot, wearing a faded blue hoodie and holding his favorite stuffed animal, a little dog named Cosmo. "What's up, buddy?" Elon asked, trying to sound casual, though he was already reaching for his keys. X hesitated for a moment, then stepped closer. His next words weren't what Elon expected. "Can we go to church today?" Elon blinked. Church? He hadn't heard that word, let alone thought about going since his own childhood in Pretoria. To Elon, religion had always felt like something of a cultural artifact, a tool, a story passed down for comfort or control. It was not something he ever really practiced. He believed in physics, probabilities, cosmic expansion. He believed in Mars. But X wasn't asking a theological question. He was asking as a son. Elon set his binder down slowly. "Church?" he repeated, searching his son's eyes. "Yeah," X said. "There's a little one near here. I saw it when we drove by last week. It looked peaceful." Elon chuckled lightly, rubbing the stubble on his chin. "Peaceful, huh? Most kids your age ask to go to the arcade or a superhero movie." "I know," X said simply. "But I want to talk to God today." It wasn't a demand, it wasn't even a request, really. It was a quiet declaration, sincere and unshaken. Something about the way X said it made the air feel heavier. Elon didn't answer immediately. His fingers tapped the ceramic coffee mug in a slow rhythm. Finally, he sighed and stood up. "All right, kiddo. Let's go see what this church is about." They passed wide-open fields, wooden fences, and rustic barns that hadn't yet given in to modernity. It was the kind of Texas beauty that crept up on you. Not flashy, but real. Along the way, X sat in the back seat, humming softly. Elon occasionally glanced at him through the rearview mirror, half expecting the boy to change his mind. He didn't. I didn't know you were into church," Elon said, trying to sound nonchalant. "I'm not into church," X answered, "but I'm into listening, and I feel like I need to listen today." Elon raised an eyebrow. His son, all of 5 years old, spoke like someone much older, like someone who had already experienced the ache of silence. He knew X had been quietly processing a lot after the divorce, but this was something deeper. They arrived at Elevation Hill Church, a modest white chapel tucked behind a line of tall pine trees. It wasn't glamorous. There were no neon signs or LED walls, no sleek architecture or valet parking. Just a wooden cross, a gravel lot, and a welcoming hand-painted sign, "Come as you are. Stay if you're tired." Elon read the words and felt something shift in his chest. Soft piano music played in the background as people shuffled to their seats. No one recognized Elon. Not here. No reporters, no cameras, no curious fans. Just a few dozen ordinary people, greeting each other with hugs and quiet nods. X led the way, slipping into a pew near the middle. Elon followed, trying not to look out of place, though he felt like a Martian in a grocery store. His eyes wandered across the stained glass windows. One showed a shepherd carrying a lost lamb, Another showed a father running to embrace his prodigal son. The irony wasn't lost on him. Soon a man in a simple white shirt and jeans stepped onto the small platform. He looked to be in his early 40s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Good morning, everyone," he said warmly. "I'm Stephen. Welcome to Elevation Hill," the congregation murmured in response. "We're not big on performance here," Stephen continued. "We're big on people. And today we're going to talk about something that's been weighing on my heart. The invisible father." Elon tensed. What were the odds? As the sermon began, Elon found himself strangely engaged. Stephen didn't preach with theatrics. He spoke plainly, softly. He talked about how easy it is for parents, especially fathers, to disappear from their children's lives, even when they live under the same roof. Not because they're bad people, but because they get caught in the storms of stress, ambition, and distraction. He quoted from Psalm 68:5, "A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling." Then he paused. "There are kids," Stephen said slowly, "who live in million-dollar homes, go to private schools, wear designer shoes, and still feel like orphans." Elon didn't move, not a twitch. He didn't need Stephen to name names. He already saw a mirror, and what he saw was not the tech titan of the century. What he saw was a man who had given the world rockets and electric cars, but may have failed to give his son something far simpler: presence. He glanced at X. The boy was listening, hands folded neatly in his lap. After the service, there was no altar call, no pressure, just silence. And in that silence, Elon felt something inside him soften, something that had been hard for too long. X turned to him, eyes shining. "Thank you for coming with me," he said. Elon nodded, but his voice caught in his throat. He cleared it awkwardly. "Hey, buddy, why today? Why church?" X looked down at his shoes. For a second, Elon thought he wouldn't answer. Then quietly he said, "Because I miss you. Even when you're here." The words hit Elon like a tidal wave, not angry, not blaming, just honest. He knelt beside the pew, hugging X tight, tighter than he had in months, maybe years. In that moment, Elon Musk, the billionaire, the genius, the visionary, was just a man, a father who had wandered too far into the galaxy and nearly lost the one planet that mattered most. As they walked out into the warm Texas sun, Elon didn't think about work. He didn't think about Mars. He didn't think about earnings reports or shareholder meetings. He thought about what it means to show up, not for the world, but for your child. That morning had not gone as planned. It had gone better. Much, much better. That afternoon, the mansion stood quieter than usual. After returning from church, Elon Musk didn't rush to his office. He didn't check his email, scroll through code updates, or pull up supply chain reports from Shanghai. Instead, he walked slowly through the hallway of his home, hands in his pockets, head full of questions. His son's voice kept ringing in his ears, "Because I miss you, even when you're here." It was a small sentence, a child's sentence, but it carried the weight of galaxies. In the silence of his study, Elon stood before a shelf lined with photos, snapshots of rocket launches, Tesla roadshows, awards, smiling world leaders, and wedged between them, like an afterthought, a small, framed photo of X when he was a baby, swaddled in a SpaceX blanket, blinking up at the camera. It had been a proud day, but also a distant one. Elon remembered leaving the hospital just hours after X's birth, flying straight to an emergency meeting with investors about Solar City. At the time, it seemed justified. After all, he was trying to change the world. But now, standing in front of that photo, something inside him cracked. He sank into the leather chair beside the fireplace, staring into nothing. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't solving problems. He was finally seeing one. That evening, X came knocking at his door, cradling a box of Legos. "Want to build something with me?" he asked. Elon blinked, then smiled faintly. "Sure. What are we making?" X looked up thoughtfully. "A house, but not a big one. A small one where people listen to each other." Elon nodded slowly. "That's a good design." They sat cross-legged on the floor of the study, pouring colorful pieces out onto the rug. The sun outside dipped lower, painting golden lines across the floorboards. As they worked, Elon noticed something. X didn't build in a rush. He selected each piece carefully, his small fingers examining shapes and colors with quiet precision. "Where'd you learn to build like that?" Elon asked. "You," X said with a smile. Elon froze. He wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. "I thought you weren't watching me," he murmured. "I always watch you," X said simply. "You're just not always looking back." Later, that night, long after X had fallen asleep, Elon found himself back in the study, this time with an old notebook. Not a tablet, not a Neuralink, just pen and paper. He began to write. It wasn't for publication. It wasn't for investors. It was a letter to his son, one he might never even show. But he needed to say the things he didn't know how to say aloud. "Dear X, I don't know when I started thinking that changing the world was more important than being present in yours. I guess I thought I could do both. But I missed things. A lot of things. And today you showed me what I've really been missing. You showed me God without ever saying his name. You showed me how to slow down. You reminded me that the people we love don't just want our inventions, they want us. I don't have the answers yet, but I promise I'm going to try. Harder to be here. Really be here. Love, Dad." He closed the notebook slowly and set it on the desk beside him. Then he turned off the light, letting the moonlight spill gently across the room. The next morning brought unexpected rain. Texas storms didn't ask for permission. They just came, rolling in like freight trains, shaking windows, drenching the sea. Landscape in seconds. The Musk mansion stood tall, but the air inside was heavy. Elon made pancakes. He couldn't remember the last time he had. He cracked eggs clumsily, burned the first batch and even forgot to grease the skillet. But he laughed through all of it. When X wandered in, rubbing his eyes, he blinked at the mess on the counter. "Did the robot chef malfunction?" he teased. "Nope," Elon said, flipping a pancake. "The human one is learning how to reboot." They ate breakfast on the back patio, watching lightning flash in the distance. Elon cleared his throat. "So, what did you think of church yesterday?" X took a bite before answering. "I liked it. It felt like people were listening, not just to each other, but to something bigger." Elon nodded. "I felt that too." There was a pause. "Dad," X said, chewing slowly, "do you believe in God?" Elon hesitated. He had spent his life swimming in science, astrophysics, artificial intelligence, string theory. He didn't need a higher power to explain the universe, but lately he realized, maybe the question wasn't about explanation. Maybe it was about connection. "I'm not sure," he said honestly, "but I believe in you and I believe in what I felt yesterday." X smiled. "That's a good place to start." That afternoon, Elon drove alone. Just needed to clear his head. He found himself pulling into a small bookstore near downtown Austin. It was the kind of place that still sold dusty hardcovers and played jazz from hidden speakers. He walked aimlessly through the aisles until a worn paperback caught his eye. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. The title stirred something in him. He remembered hearing it once in a debate. A book written by a man who had walked away from faith and then found his way back. Not through guilt or fear, but through reason and longing. Elon flipped it open and read a line. "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." He bought the book. No PR team, no cameras. Just a man and a question. That night, Elon sat by X's bed as he drifted off to sleep. "Dad," X mumbled, already half asleep, "can we go again next Sunday?" "To church?" "Yeah." Elon ran a hand through his son's soft hair. "Yes," he said quietly. "We'll go every Sunday if you want." And he meant it, not just as a promise to X, but as a promise to himself. Because for the first time in a long time, Elon Musk wasn't trying to build the future. He was trying to rebuild right now. One moment, one breakfast, one bedtime conversation at a time. The following Sunday came faster than Elon expected. A week ago, church had been a detour, an odd request from his son, X. But now it loomed in His mind like a new moon in a scientist's sky, strange, uncertain, full of gravity. At precisely 9:17 a.m., X stood in the foyer, dressed in a white button-up shirt slightly too big for him, a crooked tie hanging around his neck like a small victory. His excitement was unmistakable, but there was a softness in his eyes too, like he didn't want to scare his father away. Elon emerged from his room wearing a navy blazer he hadn't touched in years. It felt foreign on his shoulders, like stepping into someone else's timeline. But when X saw him, his face lit up. "You look like a president," Elon chuckled. "Let's just hope I don't start any wars." They drove with the windows down, letting the morning wind sweep into the car. X talked about school, video games, a story he wanted to write about a boy who builds a spaceship to find his missing sister. Elon listened, not with the usual half-distracted nods, but truly, deeply, as if every word was a star in X's personal galaxy. The church was the same small chapel as before, nestled between rows of sun-splashed trees. As they pulled into the gravel lot, Elon noticed something new. People smiled at him. Not the kind of smiles he was used to, forced smiles, networking smiles, but the kind that said, "I'm glad you came back." A young woman at the entrance handed them a folded bulletin and greeted X by name. "Hi again, X, and welcome back, Mr. Musk." "Just Elon," he said, surprised to hear himself. They found a pew near the back. As the worship music began, Elon stayed seated, letting the gentle swell of guitars and voices wash over him. X stood beside him, humming along quietly, swaying just slightly, unaware that his father was watching. Him with something between awe and heartbreak. How had he missed this? This soft, sincere soul. The pastor spoke on the theme of restoration, not in grand gestures, but in small daily acts of presence. "God doesn't need you to be perfect," the pastor said. "He just wants you to show up, not with your resume, but with your heart." Elon didn't believe easily. He'd spent his life demanding data, models, proof. But sitting there beside X, hearing those words echo across wooden beams, he felt something he couldn't code, longing. After the service, X tugged Elon's sleeve. "Can we stay for coffee?" Elon glanced around at the folding tables in the side hall, coffee, muffins, laughter, paper cups and crumpled napkins. It was nothing like the sleek networking events he attended. No name tags, no text slides, just people being people. He nodded. "Yeah, we can stay." X ran off to join a group of kids building towers out of plastic cups, while Elon stood, awkwardly by the coffee table. He reached for a cup only to fumble and spill a few drops on his sleeve. "Gravity still wins," a voice beside him said. He turned to see an older man, dressed plainly, with eyes that smiled before his mouth did. "Elon Musk, right?" the man asked, extending his hand. "Name's Robert, I'm the janitor here." "Nice to meet you," Elon said, surprised again by how natural it felt to say that. "I'm not really a church person," Robert grinned. "You don't have to be a church person to be a real person." They stood in silence for a moment, sipping coffee. "You know," Robert continued, "I've read about all the things you're doing. Mars, satellites, artificial intelligence. Big stuff. But I gotta tell you, sometimes the hardest thing to build isn't a rocket." Elon raised an eyebrow. "What is it then?" Robert looked across the room at X, now laughing with two other kids. "A relationship with your kid," he said quietly. "That's the mission no one funds." The words landed deep. Elon nodded, finished his coffee, and went to sit by X. They didn't talk much, just watched the other children play. But for Elon, something sacred was beginning to take root in that quiet presence. Later, driving home, X asked, "Dad, did you like the sermon?" "I did," Elon replied. "I liked that it wasn't pushy." X looked thoughtful. "Yeah. Pastor Mark says God doesn't force people. He waits. He whispers." Elon glanced at his son, then at the road. "Have you ever felt that whisper?" X shrugged. "Sometimes, especially when I'm sad or scared, like someone's telling me it's okay, not in words but in a feeling. Like love." Elon didn't speak for a while, because he realized for all his intelligence he had no idea how to define love anymore. That night, Elon returned to the notebook. "Dear X, Today I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Stillness. Not boredom. Not anxiety. Just a kind of quiet that didn't ask for anything but honesty. I think I'm starting to understand what you see in that place. It's not the building. It's not even the music. It's the way people look at each other. The way they see each other. I've spent my life looking up at the stars, but maybe now I need to start looking straight ahead. At you. Love, Dad. Monday morning came. The week began with its usual firestorm: emails, factory schedules, investor calls. Elon sat in a meeting about the next generation starship, but something was off. He couldn't stop thinking about Robert's words. Sometimes the hardest thing to build isn't a rocket. He cancelled 2 meetings that afternoon and picked X up from school himself. As X slid into the front seat, he looked surprised. "Where's the driver?" "Off duty," Elon said with a grin. "Today you get Dad." X smiled wide. "Can we get ice cream?" "Only if we also get gummy bears." "Deal." They ate on the hood of the car, watching clouds drift by like alien ships. Elon listened as X told him about a science experiment that went wrong and how his teacher said it was okay to fail as long as he kept trying. "You ever fail, Dad?" X asked, licking his spoon. "All the time," Elon replied, "but some failures teach you more than success ever could." He paused, then added, "Like not showing up when someone needs you." X looked down. "You're here now," he said softly, and Elon realized that's all the child had ever wanted. Not a genius, not a billionaire, not a man who could build spaceships, just a father. It started with a message, a simple one, from Pastor Mark to Elon Musk. Subject: "If you ever feel like talking," message: "I'm around on Tuesday afternoons at the chapel. No agenda, just tea and quiet if you ever want to stop by. PSX is a remarkable boy." Elon read the message 3 times. The cursor blinked in reply mode for nearly 10 minutes before he closed the laptop. He wasn't sure what held him back. Pride, habit, the nagging voice of a man who'd built his life on rational thought, now wrestling with the idea of voluntarily sitting down with a preacher. But something about Pastor Mark's tone disarmed him. It wasn't dogmatic, it was human. That Tuesday he cancelled his usual afternoon call with engineers in Austin and drove himself back to the little chapel, alone. The church was empty except for the faint sound of a broom sweeping somewhere. In the distance, Pastor Mark was already seated in the side room with 2 mismatched mugs and a chipped teapot. He looked up with a gentle smile when Elon stepped in. "You actually came," the pastor said, standing to shake his hand. "I wasn't sure I would," Elon replied, easing into a creaky wooden chair. "I guess curiosity wins." Pastor Mark poured tea like a man who had no interest in hurrying anything. "Curiosity is the start of many good things, and sometimes a few uncomfortable ones." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the scent of mint tea rise between them. Elon looked around. The room was bare, no screens, no tech, just bookshelves filled with worn paperbacks, a cross on the wall, and a quiet warmth that was hard to define. "I'm not here for answers," Elon began, "and I don't do well with doctrine." Mark nodded. "Then let's not talk doctrine. Let's talk fatherhood. That's a sacred subject too." Elon hesitated, then exhaled. "You know my son, X? He's the only person who can make me question everything. He asked me why I don't believe in God. And what did you say? I said I believe in laws, physics, math. I told him that truth has to be provable." "And did he accept that?" Elon smirked. "He told me love isn't provable either. But it's real." The pastor leaned back in his chair, his eyes lighting up. "Smart kid." "He's more than smart," Elon said softly. "He sees people, feels things I've ignored. It's like he has this built-in radar for what matters most, and He paused, gripping the edge of the mug. "I've spent years chasing the stars, and forgetting to look at the faces right, in front of me." Pastor Mark let the silence linger, as if honoring what had just been said. "Elon," he finally said, "some people spend their whole lives chasing light. Others learn to recognize it when it shows up in the form of a child's voice." The pastor picked up a small book from the table and slid it toward Elon. It was the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. "Ever read it?" Elon took the book, flipped it open briefly. In college once, I liked the logic, the inversion. C.S. Lewis started as an atheist too, Pastor Mark said. A brilliant one. But eventually, he admitted that love, beauty, and conscience weren't mathematical accidents. Elon looked down at the page again. Is that what you think I'm running from, conscience? I think you're rediscovering it, Mark replied. Through your son. After an hour of tea, silence, and scattered thoughts, Elon stood to leave. Thank you for not preaching, he said. I'm not here to win debates, Mark replied. I'm here to walk with people. Faith isn't a formula. It's a relationship. On sea. The way out, Elon paused at the door. Would it be okay, he asked, if X joined one of your kids' study groups? Mark smiled. It'd be an honor. Elon nodded once, then disappeared into the afternoon light, the book tucked under his arm like a quiet agreement. That night, after dinner, Elon sat in the study as X finished brushing his teeth. The boy wandered, in with damp hair, pajama sleeves too long for his arms, and that same look of unfiltered honesty. Dad? Yeah. I saw you talking to Pastor Mark. Did you guys talk about God? Elon nodded. A little. Did he try to convert you? Elon smiled. No. He made me tea. X giggled and climbed into the oversized chair beside him. Do you think God is mad at you for not believing? Elon paused. If he exists. I don't think he's mad. Maybe just waiting. X nodded slowly. Sometimes I think God doesn't shout because he doesn't want to scare people. He just whispers and lets us choose. Elon ruffled his son's hair. You're growing up to be pretty wise. X looked up. You're growing up too, Dad. The following Sunday, Elon didn't wait for X to ask. He dressed first, packed a thermos of coffee, polished his shoes, and waited by the car. They arrived at church early. X disappeared with the kids, and Elon sat in the back pew again, this time alone, on purpose. The service that day was quieter than usual. The pastor spoke about the prodigal son, a boy who took his inheritance early, ran far away and returned home only after losing everything. But instead of judgment, his father ran to him with open arms. Elon's chest tightened. He wasn't the boy in that story. He was the father. Only he hadn't always run to meet his son. He'd run away. Into factories, into Mars colonies, into ambition, and now somehow by a thread of grace he was making his way back. After the service he sat again with Robert, the janitor, who handed him a napkin-wrapped cinnamon bun. Thought you'd need something sweet to digest that message, Robert joked. Elon took it gratefully. Do you think it's ever too late? To change? Robert squinted up at the stained glass window. I think time doesn't work the same in God's world. I think 1 second of real honesty can undo 10 years of pride. Elon chewed in silence, then whispered, What if I don't know how to pray? Robert grinned. Try talking to him like you talk to X. That hit hard, because for the first time in years, Elon had been talking to his son. Really talking. And maybe, just maybe, that was the start of a different kind of prayer. It began as a whisper, a blurry photo snapped from the corner of a phone screen. Elon Musk, billionaire, tech visionary, man of rockets and reason, sitting quietly in the back row of a small-town church beside his son, hands folded, head bowed. The image surfaced on a Christian parenting blog by Tuesday morning. By noon, it had made its way to a faith-based Facebook group with over 400,000 followers. By Wednesday, a Twitter account named Faith Spotted tweeted, Is that Elon Musk at church with his son? God moves in mysterious ways. Musk at church, the post exploded, over 1 million views in a day. Speculation, debates, memes, was it real? Was it a one-time thing? Was Musk converting? Elon hadn't said a word. But the world didn't wait for confirmation. Back in California, the Tesla comms team began receiving press requests. CNBC wanted a statement. The Atlantic wanted an op-ed. Fox News called it the awakening of a scientific titan, while the Daily Show joked, Musk going to church is like Einstein joining a drum circle. Grimes texted him a screenshot with the caption, Guess you're a spiritual influencer now. Elon didn't reply. He didn't know how to feel. The spotlight was something he was used to. but not like this. Not when it came to the sacred space he was beginning to explore. X noticed the shift before Elon brought it up. "Dad," he said at breakfast one morning, "I think people know about the church thing." Elon looked up from his coffee. "Yeah, I think they do." "Does it bother you?" Elon paused. "A little. Not because I'm ashamed, just... it's something I'm still figuring out. I don't want people to turn it into a performance." X nodded. "You know what Pastor Mark says? Faith is personal, not private." Elon raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a paradox." X smiled. "Yeah, I think that's the point." That Sunday, Elon returned to church with X like usual, but this time people looked, quietly, respectfully. Some offered a nod. A few shook his hand. One older woman from the choir, who looked like she'd survived a dozen wars and outlived 3 husbands, leaned over to whisper, "It's good to see a man your age still learning." Fate struck Elon like a stone thrown into still water. Pastor Mark didn't mention the media buzz during the sermon. He didn't make any public comment. But after the service, as families mingled and kids tugged on sleeves for snacks, he walked up beside Elon near the garden path and said, "I saw the article. I imagine this is new territory." Elon chuckled dryly. "That's one way to put it." Mark folded his arms. "You know, Jesus didn't avoid crowds, but he also didn't let them define him. If this space is real for you, don't let the noise take that away." Elon nodded slowly. "I didn't expect it to feel so vulnerable. That's what happens when something starts mattering." That night, Elon pulled up the old guest room laptop and opened a blank document. He stared at it for 20 minutes before writing the first line, "I don't know if God exists the way religion describes him, but something inside me is waking up." Then another, "I used to think faith was the absence of intelligence. Now I wonder if it's the beginning of understanding something bigger than intellect." He wrote for hours, not for the press, not for a blog, just for himself. He wrote about watching X sing in the kids' choir, off-key but beaming, about the janitor named Robert who called him brother every Sunday, like they'd known each other for years, about the silence in the chapel on Tuesday afternoons, and how it soothed a kind of ache he didn't even know he had. By the time he stopped, the sun was rising. Later that week, a call came in from his executive assistant. "Hey, just a heads up. Time magazine wants you on the cover again. Something about the reinvention of Elon Musk." Elon laughed. "Because I went to church?" "Pretty much. They want a quote. Maybe something inspirational." Elon thought for a long time, then said quietly, "Tell them this. I'm not reinventing myself. I'm remembering who I am." The line spread faster than the original photo. 2 days later, while Elon was charging his Tesla near the supercharger station, a man approached. Him, mid-40s, rough around the edges with a ball cap and sunburnt hands. "Mr. Musk?" he asked, nervous. Elon turned, ready for either a selfie or a complaint. But the man just said, "I saw the picture, the one at church." Elon nodded. "Yeah, that one's made the rounds." The man swallowed. "Just wanted to say thanks. I haven't been back to church since my wife died last year, but when I saw you there, how with your boy, something hit me. I figured if you could go, maybe I could too." Elon didn't know what to say. He offered the man a firm handshake. Sometimes that was enough. That night, Elon walked into X's room after bedtime. X was still awake, reading a comic book under the blanket with a flashlight. Elon sat on the edge of the bed. "Hey, buddy, you remember the first Sunday we went to church?" X nodded. "I wasn't ready then," Elon admitted. "But I went because of you." X blinked. "Are you ready now?" Elon smiled. "I don't know what ready means, but I know I want to keep walking this road. With you." X reached out and took his dad's hand. "I think God's okay." With slow walkers. By the end of the month, media attention started to fade. The novelty wore off. Another celebrity scandal replaced the headlines, but Elon kept going. Tuesday afternoons for tea with Pastor Mark, Sunday mornings with X, quiet writing sessions late at night, conversations with strangers who'd seen something of themselves. In his search, it was no longer about the photo. It wasn't about the press. It was about a man, a father, a seeker, slowly being changed by love, vulnerability, and the voice of a child who believed enough for them both. Tuesday afternoon brought a soft rain over the hills of Bel Air, the kind that whispered against the windows instead of pounding. Elon stood by the tall glass wall in the living room, watching droplets race each other down the surface, like memories chasing time. He hadn't gone into Tesla headquarters that day. He hadn't answered emails. He hadn't tweeted. He just stood there, staring at the storm and feeling something stir. A quiet pull inside, like a door he had locked long ago, was rattling from the inside. That evening he drove alone to the church. No public service, no crowds, just the quiet sanctuary, lit by soft lamplight and the smell of wood and wax that somehow calmed his nervous system. Pastor Mark was in his office sorting books when Elon knocked. "You have a minute?" Mark looked up. "I've got the whole hour." Elon sat down in the chair across from the desk and exhaled heavily. He looked like a man preparing to go back, into a room he once swore he'd never enter. "I need to talk about my father," he said. Mark didn't interrupt. "I don't know if you've ever read anything about him," Elon continued. "Elon Musk, South Africa. Brilliant man, charismatic, charming when he wanted to be, but cruel in ways that left cracks in your bones." His voice remained steady, but his hands clenched faintly in his lap. "He once told me I'd never be loved unless I earned it. That stuck. Even when I was building PayPal, launching SpaceX, that voice was in my ear, telling me I was never enough." Mark leaned forward slightly. "What did that voice do to you?" "It made me build," Elon said. "It made me try to outrun that emptiness. I thought success would silence it, but it just made it echo louder, like I'd built a billion-dollar amplifier for my father's voice." He chuckled bitterly. "And then X, my son. He says something kind, or asks me to come to church, and suddenly I hear another voice, a small, patient one, not demanding. Just inviting." Mark smiled gently. "That's the voice you follow now?" Elon nodded slowly. "I think so, but part of me still feels like that scared kid, the one who had to earn love, even from God." Silence hung for a moment, heavy but holy. Mark said, "Elon, can I ask you something difficult?" "Sure. If you met that child version of yourself, the one hiding from his father's rage, what would you say to him now?" Elon swallowed hard. The question struck somewhere deep, behind all the fame, the fire, and the fight. He looked away for a moment, then whispered, "I'd say, Asika, I see you. You don't have to prove anything. You are already worthy of love." He left the pastor's office in silence, but something shifted. Something opened. The next day he found an old box in his storage room, dusty, untouched. It held things from childhood, a broken toy robot, a few scribbled pages from a science notebook, and one black and white photo of him and his father standing near a plane. Elon stared at the photo for a long time, not with hatred, not with nostalgia, but with acceptance. He slipped it into a drawer, not to forget, but to let it rest. That week he invited X on a camping trip, not the luxury glamping kind, but the real kind. A tent, a fire, stars. They drove out to Joshua Tree on Friday night, Elon quietly grateful no one followed them. They sat around the campfire that night, wrapped in jackets and flickering orange light. X roasted marshmallows while Elon watched him, quietly amazed at how simple peace could be. "Dad?" X asked suddenly. "What was your dad like?" Elon stared into the fire. The question came like a spark. "He was complicated," Elon said. "Smart, strong, but he was also broken. And he passed some of that brokenness to me." X looked up. "Did he ever tell you he loved you?" Elon's throat tightened. He shook his head slowly. "Not in the way I needed." X leaned against his dad's side. "I'm sorry." "Me too." They sat together in silence. Then, in a voice that cracked just slightly, Elon said, "I don't want to pass that brokenness on to you." "You won't," X replied softly. "You're here." Back in LA a few days later, Elon found himself standing before the full-length mirror in his bedroom. He was wearing a simple navy suit, no tie, hair combed, not styled. In his hand was a small envelope. He had written a letter to his father, Not one he planned to send. Errol was far away and even further in spirit, but one that needed to be written nonetheless. Dear Dad, you were the fire that lit my ambition, and the shadow that chased me. I've lived much of my life trying to earn your respect, but today I'm learning to live without needing it. I forgive you, not because you asked, but because I can't carry the weight anymore. I hope wherever you are there's peace. But if there isn't, I'm learning how to find it anyway. He folded the letter, placed it in a drawer beside the photo and closed it. Then he whispered to the mirror, not to his reflection, but to that frightened child still living inside. You're safe now. Later. That week, Pastor Mark gave a sermon about redemption. He didn't name names, but everyone knew the message hit deeper than usual. He spoke of second chances. Not just in relationships, but within ourselves. Of the courage it takes to break the patterns we inherited, to stop passing down the pain, to start passing down love instead. Elon sat beside X in the second row, hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder. He didn't cry, but his eyes glistened with something truer than tears, not sorrow, not regret, hope. Outside the church, a stranger stopped him again, a woman this time, in her 60s with a cane and a gentle voice. My dad never told me he loved me either, she said quietly, but I watched you on TV. You're doing the thing I couldn't, you're breaking the chain. Elon nodded, moved beyond words. Then for the first time he looked toward the steeple with something resembling reverence, not because it stood tall, but because it pointed toward healing. The following Sunday brought a kind of stillness that only early morning light can carry. Elon had awakened before X. He stood in the kitchen, sipping a black coffee barefoot on the cold marble floor. The house was quiet, but his thoughts weren't. A flyer had been left at the church last week, simple, hand-printed, almost amateur, but something about it had caught his attention. Community Service Day feeding the forgotten. Volunteers needed. Saturday, 9 a.m., corner of 5th and Boyle, East LA. He wasn't sure why he hadn't thrown it out. He had no PR obligation. No press would be there. It was far from glamorous, far from his world of rockets and renderings, but something in him, that new voice, that gentler one, had whispered go. By 8:45 a.m., Elon Musk was walking through a part of Los Angeles he had never seen up close. Not from a Tesla window, not from a boardroom projection. These were the streets. People rarely Instagrammed, cracked sidewalks, faded murals. Apartment blocks where hope looked worn thin but hadn't yet given up. A group of volunteers had already gathered. Retirees in faded Dodgers caps, young mothers with strollers, teens with earbuds tucked under hairnets, and in the middle of them, Pastor Mark is wearing an apron. Elon, he beamed, handing over a pair of plastic gloves. You came. Elon nodded. Yeah, I figured I could take a break from saving the world to, feed it. Mark laughed. You'll be on bread duty, that cart's yours. By 10 o'clock a line had formed down the block, men with haunted eyes, women clutching children to their sides, people who looked tired not just in body, but in soul. Elon stood behind the folding table handing out sandwiches. 1, 2, 1, 2, says like clockwork. It should have been mechanical, repetitive, but it wasn't, because every face had a story, and slowly the repetition gave way to revelation. There was Miguel, who used to be an engineer in Mexico City before a factory closed. Now he collected cans and slept behind a laundromat. There was Teresa, a grandmother raising 3 grandkids after her daughter vanished. She said, "Thank you," like it hurt to say it. And there was Reggie, tall, thin, barefoot, who simply nodded as Elon handed him food and whispered, "I remember you." Elon blinked. "Sorry?" Reggie pointed at him. "From the TV, Mars guy. Man, I didn't think you were real." Elon smiled faintly. "Some days I don't either." Later, as they packed up crates and wiped down tables, Elon looked around, at the volunteers. They weren't rich, they weren't famous, but they were present. They were real. He found Pastor Mark stacking crates and said, "I've never felt more human than I did today." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Not when you launched a car into orbit," Elon chuckled. "Especially not then." Mark paused, then asked gently, "Want to see something else?" A few blocks down, behind a gated lot and next to a graffiti tagged, Church wall stood a low cinder block building with a hand-painted sign, the Maker's Room Youth Tech and Trade Center. Powered by volunteers inside, the air smelled of solder and possibility. A group of teenagers hunched over old laptops and broken 3D printers, wires coiled like spaghetti across metal tables. "This is where some of our kids come after school," Mark explained. "They learn basic coding, repairs, design. You'd be surprised how many build from trash." Elon's eyes lit up. A lanky teen named Darius approached him cautiously. "Hey, Mr. Musk, I built something." He pulled out a crude VR headset, made from a cardboard shell, 2 cheap lenses and duct tape. "It doesn't track well," Darius admitted, "but it can run a Mars walk simulation if you use the Wi-Fi from next door." Elon took it. He turned it over in his hands like it was the Hope Diamond. "This," he said, "is genius." Darius's face broke into a grin the size of Jupiter. That night, back at the Bel Air home, Elon sat with X in the garden under soft string lights. They shared leftover pizza and stories from the day. "I met a kid who could probably run an entire factory if someone gave him a chance," Elon said. "He reminded me of, well, me, back when all I had was curiosity and a soldering gun." X looked at him with interest. "So what are you going to do?" Elon took a sip of his drink. "I'm thinking about starting something." "What kind of something?" He smiled slowly. "A program. For under-resourced kids. Tech meets dignity. No handouts, just tools and belief," X nodded. "Like giving them what you wish someone gave you?" "Exactly." They sat in silence for a moment. Then X asked, "Do you think God is proud of that?" Elon blinked. That question had never occurred to him before. "I don't know," he said, honestly. "But I think I might be proud of myself, and maybe that's a start." By Monday, Elon had already scheduled meetings, not with investors, but with community leaders, educators, and tech partners. He began designing what he would later call the Genesis Project, a grassroots initiative to bring microfabrication labs, mentorship, and real-world training to underfunded neighborhoods. No cameras, no headlines, just quiet power, real change. And as the plans took shape, he felt something strange and new. Peace, not the passive kind, but the active kind, born of purpose, rooted in service, fueled not by ego, but by empathy. That Sunday, Pastor Mark made an announcement at church. "We've received an anonymous donation," he smiled. "Someone's helping us expand the Maker's Room into 3 new neighborhoods, and they've also offered, well, let's just say the VR headsets are about to get a serious upgrade." The congregation clapped, whistled, some wept. Only X looked over and gave Elon a knowing smile. Elon didn't say a word, he just mouthed, "Thank you," not to the church, not to the crowd, but to the small voice inside him that had said, "Go." And he had. It was Tuesday morning when the first headlines hit. What's Elon Musk doing in church kitchens instead of gigafactories? Musk's latest venture, a soup kitchen with Wi-Fi. Faith-based philanthropy. Has Musk gone soft? They weren't cruel, not outright. But the tone was unmistakable, skeptical, condescending, amused. Inside the sleek, glass-walled conference room at SpaceX, Elon sat across from a half-circle of familiar faces, board members, strategic partners, financial officers. He could almost feel the tension humming off their tailored suits. The first voice came from Olivia, CFO of Tesla. "Elon, we support your right to engage in personal endeavors," she began delicately. "But your visibility at that community center, in East LA of all places, has sparked speculation. Investors are nervous." "About what?" Elon asked, voice calm. Another man, Greg from legal, jumped in. "They're wondering what's next. A sermon on Mars? A tech baptism package with every Cybertruck?" There was a chuckle from the corner of the room. Elon didn't smile. "Let me be clear," he said, leaning forward. "I'm not quitting, not stepping away from the companies. I'm expanding my bandwidth, not dividing it." "Still," Olivia continued, "there's concern your focus is shifting, that you're allowing emotion to override strategic logic." He looked at her steady. "Is it illogical to care?" A silence fell, brief but heavy. Then Greg asked, Where does this lead, Elon? Churches, charities. What happens when you start preaching forgiveness instead of profit margins? Later, that evening, Elon stood alone on the rooftop of the SpaceX building, gazing out over the sprawl of Los Angeles. City lights flickered like neurons, and yet, somewhere beyond the electric skyline, he felt something bigger. X had called him during the drive home. "Dad, are you okay?" his son asked, voice soft. "I think I'm in trouble for caring too much," Elon answered with a dry laugh. "Then it's probably the right kind of trouble," X said, and that somehow gave him strength. The backlash wasn't just from the boardroom, online. Forums buzzed with conspiracy theories. Was Musk converting, leaving science behind? Was it all a stunt? A well-known science podcast host tweeted, "When billionaires find religion, innovation loses oxygen." A tech columnist wrote, "We don't need Elon Musk feeding the poor. We need him focusing on Mars. That's where he belongs." But what struck Elon most was the tone, as if humanity was a distraction, as if empathy was an inefficiency. That night he pulled up one of his old videos, an archive interview from 2008. Back then, younger, nervous, full of energy. In it, a younger Elon said, "We have to imagine a future that's not just sustainable, but worth sustaining. That includes people, lives, dignity. Otherwise, what's the point of technology?" He paused the video and whispered to himself, "Exactly." By Thursday, the story had reached TV. On a primetime news panel, 4 analysts debated his recent church visits and community projects. Has Musk lost the edge? One asked, or found something deeper? Another countered. A former hedge fund manager said bluntly, "Empathy is not a business model." But the last guest, a retired civil rights leader, leaned forward and said quietly, "Maybe it should be." Elon watched in silence. Then he turned off the television. He didn't need to fight the noise. He just needed to stay the course. At the next service day, he returned to East LA. No cameras, no security detail, just Elon, an apron and a box of donated circuit boards under his arm. Inside the maker's room, Darius ran up, beaming. "We heard what they're saying about you on TV." "Yeah?" Elon smiled. "They say you've gone soft." Darius held up a small drone prototype. "But I think going soft is helping us build hard tech." They both laughed. Elon looked around the room, at kids tinkering, sketching, learning, and felt grounded in something real. Purpose that wasn't pixelated. Hope that wasn't hypothetical. That Sunday, Elon did something unexpected. He went back to church, but not to sit in. The back row this time. Pastor Mark had asked him cautiously, "Would you be open to sharing a few words?" Elon hesitated. He wasn't a preacher. He barely understood half the Bible, but something in him said yes. So he stood, awkward at first, in front of the small congregation, families, seniors, kids with tangled shoelaces. "I'm not here to convert you," Elon began. "And I'm not sure if I'm the one changing, or just waking up to something I missed." He glanced at X in the pews. "My son asked me a question recently. He asked, 'Do you think God is proud of what you're doing?' I didn't have an answer then, but today, I think maybe God, or the universe, or whatever you believe in, is proud when we choose to see each other, to help, even when it costs us something." There were no loud amens, no thunderous applause, just a quiet stillness, a kind of sacred silence. And in that silence, Elon found peace. After the service, an elderly man in a wheelchair rolled up beside him. "Mr. Musk," he said, grasping Elon's hand, "I don't know much about spaceships, but I do know what it feels like to be seen. Thank you for that." Elon nodded, unable to speak for a moment, because somehow that meant more than any stock surge or product launch ever had. That evening, back in Bel Air, he met with his team via secure video call. "I'm not stopping what we're building," he told them. "Not the EVs, not the rockets, but I'm adding something new to the blueprint." "What exactly?" Olivia asked, more curious than combative this time. "A place for humanity," Elon said. "In the equation, in the process. Not at the end, as an afterthought, but baked in from the beginning." Silence, then slowly a nod, and another. The mood shifted. Maybe they wouldn't all understand. Not yet. But they didn't need to, because Elon did. It started small. A single post on LinkedIn. A quiet photo. Elon, sleeves rolled up, kneeling beside. How a 10-year-old girl soldering wires onto a small solar-powered car. No PR team. No hashtags. Just a moment caught by a volunteer who wrote, "Today, Elon Musk taught my daughter how to build a clean energy circuit. He told her, the world needs your mind and your heart. I've never seen her so alive." Within hours, the photo had been shared tens of thousands of times. The comments were different from the usual stock banter. They came from teachers, nurses, veterans, single parents. This is the kind of leadership I want my kids to see. He's finally becoming more than a CEO. He's becoming a mentor. If this is what the future of tech looks like, I'm here for it. What had begun as a father following his son to church was now quietly becoming a movement. 3 days later, something unusual happened in Austin. At Tesla HQ, a group of junior engineers approached their manager with a proposal to host monthly design hackathons, not for new products, but for public good. "I know it sounds off-brand," the team lead said, "but imagine our battery tech powering low-income schools or refugee camps." The manager hesitated. "Does Elon know about this?" "Not yet," she said, "but I think he'd want to." Word got to Elon by evening. He called them directly. "I don't just want to approve it," he said. "I want to come to the first one." Elsewhere at SpaceX, whispers began. A propulsion engineer named Ramon started organizing weekend tutoring sessions for underserved youth in Hawthorne. A cafeteria worker suggested turning unused land near the facility into a community garden. One by one, small acts of compassion began surfacing. Not mandated, not rewarded on payrolls, but contagious. The culture, once optimized solely for efficiency, was subtly recalibrating itself around something more human. The press noticed, but this time the headlines felt different. Tesla's newest innovation, empathy in action. Can Silicon Valley still have a soul? Musk's quiet revolution says yes. From Mars to Main Street, why Elon Musk is rethinking impact. On MSNBC, a panelist who once ridiculed Elon's church visits now said, "I used to think he was having a midlife crisis, but what if it's not a breakdown? What if it's a breakthrough?" On a quiet Friday morning, Elon received an email that made him pause. It came from an unlikely source, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. The subject line simply read, "Elon, I've been watching." In the email, Satya shared how he too had long wrestled with how to blend empathy with execution. That watching Elon's recent steps had stirred something in him. That perhaps together, tech leaders could begin a new kind of dialogue, not about quarterly goals but about eternal values. Elon stared at the screen, fingers still, heart oddly full. He replied, "Let's talk." Not as CEOs, just as men trying to do good before it's too late. Later that week, X sat across from his father at the kitchen table. The boy had a marker in hand and was sketching something on a napkin. A big building with solar panels, a garden, and a neon sign that read, "Hope Lab." "What's this?" Elon asked. "It's my idea," X said, smiling. "A place where kids can build stuff that helps people. Maybe you could build it with me." Elon swallowed hard. "I think we already started building it, don't you?" he said gently. X looked up. "So, are you still going to space?" "Yes," Elon nodded. "But I want to make Earth a little more heavenly first." The next board meeting was different. Olivia, once skeptical, began the session with a surprising announcement. "Investor inquiries are up," she said, "but not about quarterly gains. They're asking about community impact, ESG metrics, social value, indicators." Another executive added, "HR reports higher employee satisfaction, especially among new hires." "Turns out people want to work where their hearts are welcome too." Greg from Legal gave a wry smile. "Our biggest compliance challenge now? Volunteers asking to use company printers to make flyers for food drives." The room chuckled. Then Elon spoke. "I'm not asking us to turn Tesla or SpaceX into charities, but I am asking this. If we can build self-driving cars, why can't we build workplaces that care? Cities that lift up the forgotten? Why can't we build a world that's not just smart, but kind? No one argued, no one rolled their eyes, because something had shifted, not just in the company, in the man himself, and the room knew it. A week later, a journalist from The Atlantic asked Elon a pointed question during an exclusive interview. Is this your redemption arc? Elon thought for a long time before answering. I don't believe in arcs, he said, just choices. Every day we choose who we're becoming. I spent decades choosing speed, logic, output. I'm still proud of that. But lately, I've been choosing something else too. Listening, lifting, loving. The journalist scribbled, then asked softly, do you think your mother would be proud? This time Elon didn't hesitate. Yes, he said, and not because of the rockets. On the first Saturday of the month, Elon returned to the maker's room. It was buzzing with life. Volunteers, kids, elderly mentors, former Tesla interns, now teaching soldering to veterans. He walked past a girl named Mia, showing off her solar-powered lantern. It's for people who don't have electricity, she said. I want to make one for every homeless person in LA. Elon knelt beside her. You just might, he whispered. You're exactly the kind of builder the world needs. And he meant it, because for the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't just dreaming of a better future. He was building it, right here, right now. The summit was not Elon's idea. In fact, he had politely declined the invitation, twice. It was the World Future Forum, an annual gathering of leaders from across industries, technology, faith, government, education. A place where people came not to sell ideas, but to wrestle with the future. The theme that year was unusually personal. The next generation, what will we leave them? Elon's name had been on the keynote list from the start. But for weeks he had avoided the pressure, unsure whether he belonged on that stage anymore. Not in the same way he once did. But then, the night before the forum, as he tucked X into bed, his son turned to him and said, Are you going to tell them about the napkin? Elon blinked. What napkin? X smiled. You know, the Hope Lab. Elon chuckled softly. That simple drawing, that dream, that reminder. He said yes. The auditorium in Geneva was packed. Global leaders, CEOs, journalists, religious figures, educators, all waiting for the man who had once promised to colonize Mars and wire every city with AI. But today, they would see someone else, not the showman, not the disruptor. Today, a father walked onto the stage. Elon wore a simple black suit. No slides, no lasers, no announcements. Just a small folded napkin in his breast pocket. He stood still for a moment. Before speaking, Good morning, he began. My name is Elon Musk. I build things. But today I want to talk to you about something I didn't build. He paused. I want to talk to you about what my son built. In my heart. The room grew still. You could hear people leaning forward. Elon continued, voice measured but full of something unmistakable, humility. I spent the last 30 years trying to accelerate the future. But I missed something along the way. I missed the quiet moments, the questions my son was asking while I was busy answering the universe. He took out the napkin, held it up. A few months ago he drew this, Elon said. It's called the Hope Lab, a place where kids could invent things to help people. Solar lights, water filters, recycled batteries. But more than that, he wanted a place where people were seen. He looked down briefly, then added, and for the first time I realized I hadn't been truly seeing my own son. The auditorium fell silent. Some delegates wiped tears from their eyes. Elon continued, his voice gaining strength, not in bravado, but in conviction. I used to think legacy meant breakthroughs, patents, rockets, wealth. But lately I've started asking myself, what if legacy is something quieter? What if it's the way your child watches you apologize? The way your employee feels safe to say, I'm not okay today. The way a stranger feels dignity when you stop and listen. He looked up, eyes scanning the room. I'm not here to unveil a product. I'm here to invite a shift. In leadership, in purpose, in fatherhood, in what we value. He took a breath, then stepped aside. And to the surprise of everyone, he extended a hand. And out walked X. Dressed in a tiny blazer and sneakers, he waved nervously but smiled as Elon whispered something in his ear. Then the boy stepped up to the mic. "Hi," he said, his voice small but clear. "My name is X. I asked my dad to come to church with me, and I asked him to build something with me." He held up a miniature solar panel taped to a Lego house. "This is my idea. I want every kid to feel safe and have light and food and hope. That's why we call it Hope Lab. It's not big yet. But my dad says, small things can grow." The crowd stood up. It wasn't applause, it was a standing ovation, not for innovation, but for innocence, for courage, for the next generation finally being heard. That night, the clip of X speaking went viral, not because of algorithms, but because people were hungry for something real, unpolished, unperformed. They saw in that small boy's face a glimpse of what the future could be. Not automated, not optimized, but human. Elderly veterans shared it in online forums. School teachers played it for their morning announcements. Even news anchors known for sarcasm paused to say, maybe this is what leadership looks like now. Not louder, not faster, but gentler. Back home in Austin, Elon stood on the porch of his house watching X play with a paper glider. The stars were out, the air still and soft. Grimes had joined them for dinner, the co-parenting rhythm now calmer, more respectful. She smiled at Elon from the window. For the first time in years there was peace between them. Not because everything was perfect, but because something real had been found again. "Dad?" X asked, tossing the glider. "Yeah? Do you think people will remember the Hope Lab?" Elon thought for a moment. "They might," he said, "but even if they don't, it'll still be real. And real things last longer than famous ones." A few months later, the first Hope Lab campus opened in a converted warehouse near Tesla's Gigafactory. Kids came from all over: Houston, Detroit, Albuquerque. Some were from shelters, others from wealthy private schools. But inside the Hope Lab there were no labels, just curious hands and kind hearts. Each visitor signed a giant poster by the door that read, "We build for others." And in one corner of the main wall hung a framed napkin. Beside it a plaque read, "A child asked his father to see the world through new eyes. The father listened, and together they began again." Elon still built rockets, still tested batteries, still dreamed of Mars, but something in him had changed, not by force, not by scandal, but by love. He started attending local school board meetings. He sponsored retreats for young fathers. He listened more. He interrupted less. He even cried once, during a podcast interview, when asked what he hoped his children would say about him one day. "I hope they say," Elon whispered, voice trembling, "that I showed up." And in the end he did. Not just for space, not just for science, but for the small things, the important things, the things that can't be engineered, only embraced. Epilogue: a letter, discovered years later in Elon's private journal, addressed to X. "You once asked me to come with you to church. I thought it was a small moment. It was the biggest door of my life. You led me into a sanctuary where ambition bowed to love, where silence spoke louder than data, where being your father became my greatest invention. Thank you for seeing the man I could be, before I ever did." And in the margin, a note in child's handwriting, "I love you too, Dad. I never stopped."